I've gathered the materials to make my stationary bento box. To make this project, I'm going to be using the Dreamer Collection by Mintay. I'm using this 8.5 by 11 shimmer linen paper. This is by Basil. And I'm going to be using 80-pound white cardstock from Coordinations. You'll also need a bone folder, some sort of adhesive, and you'll need a paper trimmer and a scoring board. So I'm going to clear off my desktop and we can start making the base of the bento box. I've cut out the pieces that we will need to make the boxes for our stationary bento box. To make the lid, you will need one piece that measures 12 by 12, and you want to score it at 1 7/8 on all four sides. Then you want to cut up to the first score line on either side and cut and create a little notch like I've done here. So let's do that on the other side. I'm going to simply cut up to the score line, and then I'm going to create a little wedge. This just helps make the box fold better. And then I'm going to cut a little wedge on the outside. And then we're going to do that on the other side. Now we're going to simply fold along the score lines, and you want to make sure you burnish well. And then we're going to assemble our box. To do that, we're simply going to take this flap and glue it to the inside just like so. Okay, and you want to make sure that you have your edges lined up. So I'm just going to take my art glitter glue. You could also use score tape here if you like. And you're just going to attach this so that it's nice and squared off. Okay, give that a few seconds to hold, and then just take your bone folder and burnish it. And we're going to do that for the other side. I'm going to repeat the process on the other side, and then we'll begin working on the other boxes. Now that we've completed the top of our box, we're going to repeat the same process for the next 4 boxes. So let's set this aside. For the bottom of our box, we're going to need a piece that's also 12 by 12. And this time we're going to score 2 inches on all 4 sides. We're going to cut up to the first score line, making sure that we taper the edges, and then we'll fold and burnish. For the boxes inside the larger box, we will need a piece that measures 6.5 by 10 inches. We're going to score 1 inch on all 4 sides. We'll need another piece that measures 6.5 by 5 3/8. This will also be scored at 1 inch on all 4 sides. And then finally, we will need a piece that measures 5 3/8 by 5 3/8, and this will also be scored at 1 inch on all 4 sides. I'm going to assemble the bottom of this box. The base of our box is now complete. So let's put our top on, and it fits perfectly. I'm going to assemble the rest of the boxes, and then we'll be back for the next step. I have assembled all of our boxes. Let me place these inside to show you how they will be assembled. So we have our medium box, our smaller box, and our larger box will fit inside just like so. There are a number of items that are going to be going inside, so we want to make sure that the entire construction is sturdy. So I'm going to line the outside as well as the inside of the base, the lid, as well as these boxes. I've gone ahead and cut out the matting layers for the boxes. So let me give you the dimensions for the top of the box. You'll need to cut out 2 pieces of paper that measure 8 1/8 by 8 1/8, and that will be this lilac panel here. For the decorative matting, you will need a piece that measures 7 7/8 by 7 7/8. For the side panels, the first mat is 8 1/8 by 1 3/4, and the decorative panel is 7 7/8 by 1.5 inches. For the base of the box, the center mat is 8 by 8, and the decorative panel is 7 3/4 by 7 3/4. For the side panels, you'll need 8 pieces that measure 8 by 1 7/8. and the decorative layer will be 7 3/4 by 1 5/8. And then you will repeat the same thing for the inside boxes. This larger inside box, the centerpiece measures 7 7/8 by 4 3/8, and the decorative panel measures 7 5/8 by 4 1/8. For the side panels, it's 7 7/8 by 7/8 of an inch, and then the shorter panels are 4 3/8 by 7/8 inch. I'm going to glue these pieces on, and then I'll be back to finish the rest of this project. I have covered all of the boxes, and I gave you the dimensions for the matting layers for this larger inside box, but I want to make sure that I also give you the matting layers for the smaller inserts. For this medium box, you will need a piece of cardstock for the center that measures 3 1/4 by 4 3/8, and the decorative mat is 3 by 4 1/8. For the side panels, you will need pieces that measure 4 3/8 by 7 1/8, and for the shorter panels, that's 3 1/4 by 7 1/8, and for the decorative mats, you'll need pieces that measure 4 1/8 by 5/8 and 3 by 5/8. For the smaller box, in the center, you'll need paper that measures 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. The decorative mat will be 3 inches, and the side panels, you will need 8 pieces that measure 3 1/4 by 7/8, and the decorative panel is 3 inches by 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to place these pieces inside. Now, when I put these pieces inside, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of extra space left. So what I've done is created a second tray. This tray will fit nicely on top, just like so. Okay, so let's take this out and I will give you the dimensions. To make this first tray, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 9 5/8 by 9 5/8. You are going to score at 7/8 of an inch on all 4 sides. For the matting layers, this center piece, you will need a piece of colored cardstock that measures 7 3/4 by 7 3/4, and the decorative panel is 7 1/2 by 7 1/2. For the sides of the box, you will need 8 pieces of colored cardstock that measures 7 3/4 by 3/4 of an inch, and the decorative cardstock will be 7 1/2 inches by 1/2 inch. For the larger box, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 6 1/8 by 9 5/8. You are going to score at 7/8 of an inch on all 4 sides. For the matting layers in the center, you will need colored cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 7 3/4, and the decorative panel is 4 by 7 1/2 inches. And for the side panels, the longer side panel, you'll need 4 pieces of colored cardstock that measure 7 3/4 by 3/4 of an inch. And for the shorter side, you will need a piece of colored cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 3/4 of an inch. And the decorative mat is 4 by 1/2 inch. For the medium box, you will need cardstock that measures 6 1/8 by 5 inches, and you're going to score at 7/8 of an inch on all 4 sides. For the center mat, you're going to need colored cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 3 1/8, and the decorative paper measures 4 inches by 2 7/8. For the side panels on the longer side, you will need a piece that measures 4 1/4 inch by 3/4. The decorative paper is 4 inches by 1/2 inch. And on the shorter side, you'll need a piece of colored cardstock that measures 3 1/8 by 3/4 inch. And the decorative layer is 2 7/8 inch by 1/2 inch. For the small box, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 5 by 5 inches. And again, you will score at 7/8 of an inch on all 4 sides. For the center mat, you will need colored cardstock that measures 3 1/8 inch by 3 1/8. And for the decorative panel, that will be 2 7/8 by 2 7/8. And for the mats, you will need 8 pieces that measure 3 1/8 by 3/4 of an inch. And the decorative layers are 2 7/8 by 1/2 inch. So that I can take this tray out more easily, I attached ribbon on the inside of the upper tray. This ribbon measures 4 inches and I simply folded it in half and then glued it inside. I just used my art glitter glue and it's very sturdy and that makes a nice handle. So this just fits inside here with the rest of the boxes. Now that we have completed the assembly of our stationery box, we are going to decorate the top lid. For the cover of my stationery bento box, I am going to include a shaker card. The card that we're using is from MYSCRAPCHICK and it's called Square Bracket Card with Frame. Now that file includes several different layers, however for this demo we're only going to use a few of them. I expanded the size of the card to be 7.5 by 7.5 to fit nicely on the front of the stationery box. These 3 pieces come in the file and they will be stacked like so. And we have the base of the card. I created this using 10 pieces of 110-pound cardstock glued together. This gives me the dimension that I need in order to include the sequins and other beads. Now, I could have used chipboard or foam tape. However, I think using the cardstock in this manner gives a nice clean edge. On the perimeter of this, I have included a 1/4 inch score tape, and this is where I will be gluing the acetate. This is the decorative panel that I'm going to be gluing the shaker card onto. And last but not least, we have our acetate. Both the acetate and this decorative panel measure 6 1/4 inches. I'm going to set our stationery box aside and then we'll start working on the shaker card. The first thing we need to do is grab the base, and we're going to turn this over. And then we want to grab our decorative layer. Now I did take this cardstock and I backed it with 110-pound cardstock to make it more sturdy. I'm going to remove the score tape and I'm going to frame this. Let's see, I'm going to make sure that I get this right. Okay, I'm going to push this down. Make sure there's a nice strong adhesion because we don't want any of our shaker bits coming out. Okay, so we have that piece complete. Now I'm going to take some sequins and shaker bits. I'm just going to add some in. Just going to sprinkle a little bit in. We'll put a little pink in. I'm going to put some of these white iridescent sequins in. So let's see if these will fit in. Now that we have our sequins in, I'm going to take off the score tape and we're going to put down the acetate. I'm going to put the acetate down, making sure that I've got an even border all the way around. I'm going to take a tissue and just wipe off the fingerprints. Now that we have our acetate down, I'm going to go ahead and glue down the rest of these decorative panels, and then I will be back to finish the decoration. Now that we've completed our shaker, I'm going to attach the latches to secure the top to the bottom of the box. As you can see, this is a pretty thick box. I have 2 latches and they measure 2.5 by 5 3/4. I scored these at 2 inches and 4 1/8. The colored mat is 2 3/8 by 5 5/8. And the decorative mat is 2 1/8 by 5 3/8. So these will attach just like so, and we're going to attach them with Velcro on the back. Before you glue down these handles, you want to make sure that you get them centered, and you're only going to be gluing down this portion right here. So I've already made my little marks here for where I'm going to glue them down. And I'm going to attach glue. I've also included decorative mats on the inside because when you flip the lid over, you want to see a nice finished inside. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to push this right up to the score line. Make sure that this has a nice strong adhesion. And then I'm going to glue down the other latch. Okay, I'm going to flip this over. And I have some Velcro pieces. I'm going to attach 2 Velcro pieces on each of these tabs here. I have attached my fasteners. And I ended up using magnetic closures as opposed to the Velcro. This has a much neater presentation and it's stronger. On the front, I'm going to attach my shaker square and then embellish this, and I'll be back for the final reveal. This is my completed stationary bento box, and I absolutely love the way it came out. In this video, I took you through step by step on how to create the 2 layers, as well as the hinges to close the box, and then finally the shaker element on the front. The Dreamer collection by Mintay is absolutely stunning, and it made this project such a joy to create. This concludes my review of my stationary bento box. Hopefully I've inspired you with new and creative ideas. If you like this video tutorial, please do take a moment to give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. If you create this project, please send me a message. I'd love to see what you've created. Please don't forget to check out my other videos where I do a full walkthrough of this stationary bento box, as well as a tutorial for the waterfall folio notepad. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now, and happy crafting.